Behind the Shades.
Yes, Dalene Higgins with Elevate Finances. I am a financial coach, particularly for Gen Xers, but I won't turn anybody away. You can find me on Instagram at Elevate Finances, or you can join my Facebook group as All Things Personal Finance. I love to answer people's questions. I love to talk about money. So yeah, that's what I do.
Perfect. So money is like a hot topic, at least here in Canada, because a lot of people are struggling. Inflation is impacting so many people, and it's tough out there because the money, $100 last year is not necessarily $100 this year, right? Because of the taxes and inflation. So how do you help others understand the power that they have within their dollar and how to make sure that they have a dollar, not only for today, but also for tomorrow?
Yes. Inflation is, my daughter even said to me, Mom, I was spending $50 a week. Now I'm spending 75. And I said, that's just what happens. So you hope to have some savings that you're not investing for times when inflation happens, because then you can divert it right into your budget for the week, for your groceries, we know as inflation impacts one area, it's going to hit another, right? So we've seen it hit the groceries. It's going to hit employees are going to have to be paid more, which means corporations are going to have to charge more. I know that like insurance right now on auto and home, people are seeing those rates increase, and they really have not increased over many, many years, but they're finally feeling that push to have to do that. And that's just the rising cost of living. So another term people may be familiar with is lifestyle creep. As you work, right, you hopefully get a raise or you make more money if you're an entrepreneur, that you are trying to save equally to, yes, you need more to spend, but don't spend it all. Save it. And it will help protect you in times like these inflations. And if you haven't done that, I'm sorry, but you are at a tough spot. And it's really hard, but you really have to start determining what you truly value. And what I mean by that is the things that you have to have, you have to have a roof over your head, you have to have 3 square meals a day. But beyond that, what do you value? What do you value least? And you can get rid of. And sometimes once you look at it that way, you're like, oh yeah, that was fun for the time. I really don't need that. And even if it's $10 a month, you're going to see it and it's going to help. And you just kind of go through that process of internally realizing what you truly value.
There's a running joke here in Canada that our Deputy Prime Minister, Chrystia Freeland, she said that she understands that there's a struggle that I myself may be going through, you, Dalene, and many others when it comes to the rise in groceries, the rise in gas, the rise in all these things. And she turned around, she said, I understand your pain. One of the things that I did is I canceled Disney Plus. Disney Plus is like $20 a month. That was her big suggestion for a lot of these families. And people kind of looked at her as like, you're supposed to represent us. And it showed how out of touch many of our leaders, elected officials, right, are when it comes to the struggles of the middle class, because in many societies, the middle class is the bulk of the people, right? Like people who make over 100,000, depending on their state or their province or their country, that's probably 10% or less, 300,000, 5, so on and so forth, right?
Right.
But the people who make, let's say, between 40,000 and 60,000, that's the majority of people that maybe look like me, that look like you, that look like people that are listening. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that I did was I had to understand finances, meaning that if I get paid X amount, what is my fixed liabilities? My mortgage, my rent, groceries, things that you touched on, right? Things you need to survive. And what things can I cut? They're variable, right? The Netflix, the Disney Plus, the Friday nights at the club. Well, Fridays and Saturdays for those who are ambitious. You
Yeah.
know, the baller weekends, right? So when you're speaking to your clients and those that you help, is it tough to make them understand that, hey, what are your needs versus what are your wants financially?
I have had pretty good success. A recent client, he came to me with quite a bit of debt equal to what he was earning in the year. And he's like, do I file bankruptcy? And I'm like, no. This is still such a small amount, and I want to preserve you. Bankruptcy can really wreck you. And that's a whole nother topic. But for him, I did the value thing. So we talked about, we'd laid out everything. And that's the thing I do is I lay out the numbers. We look at it. I kind of show them, here are the things that you have to have. If you're driving to work, you have to have a car. You have to have fuel for it, right? So those are even things that you have to have. Some people might say, well, you don't have to have as nice as a car. Well, you know what? That's neither here nor there. You have to have a car to get to work. And so I worked through things like that. So he had a list of several fun activities that he was paying for. He had children as well. So keep those in mind. But as we were discussing through something, I am like, you've got to cut back. I said, but I need you to choose one thing that provides value to you, that is fun for you, and that you are not going to give up. And he says, I have to have my Apple Music. And I said, okay, then understandably, everything else can go and you're happy. And he says, yes, it is my mental. So, some of those extras, like we usually can tie into one thing that provides us a mental health positive, right? And so I think that's so important, because to be able to just live with, quote, our liabilities being paid, right? Our bills, and then nothing more, that can be very, very difficult. So, at least striving for one thing. And that's why I say, reach inside, think about what you truly value. What is making you happy every day? What is making, maybe it's family. We do this together as family time, so I don't want to let this go. And just start evaluating all of those things. So the latte factor, I don't know if you've heard of that, and that's huge. It's like you have to give that up to be wealthy. That's not my motto. I believe you could, if you want, you keep lattes, but you're going to give up something else. So it's a, trade for a trade kind of thing until you fit to where you're building. And I always like to then, you've got to look down the road. You've got to find yourself in 20 years being more happy than you are now, in a sense, right? Because you're hopefully creating that freedom for yourself. I love to use the analogy of a new driver. So think about the 16-year-old learning to drive from the parent, right? And you're riding with them, they're doing well, but they are only seeing maybe half a block in front of them, and a block and a half, you can see the red light. You can see the cars stopping, and they're still going, and they're still going. And you're like, okay, you've got to look further. And that's the same with your money. You've got to look ahead. Like, what is that you want to create? So
That's one thing that I had to do for myself as well, because the last, let's say 3 years for a lot of people was very isolated. We're locked away in our homes in some places, right? We couldn't go anywhere. If I were to see my good friend Dalene down the street, I wouldn't even give her a high five, let alone a hug. I'll just wave from across the street, right? We're afraid. We're afraid of a lot of things.
Yeah.
And one thing that I did this year is I said, Terrain, it's good that you're working hard, that you're paying your bills, and you make sure that there's food on your table. But are you enjoying your life, or are you just working to pay off debt and to save? And then when you pass away, you don't have any memories, right?
Yeah.
So what I did is every month I said, I'm going to go somewhere. Even if it's just to get in my car, go to the next city, or go 2 cities over, or go to, let's say, America, or go for a drive, because I realize that there's always going to be something to pay, right? But there's not going to be always an opportunity for you to enjoy your life.
Yes.
Right? But money for me and for a lot of people around me was like a sensitive topic. You don't ask me how much I make. You don't ask me what my debt is. Just, that I'm able to finance the lifestyle that I'm presenting to you. Do you find that to be true where money, it takes some time for people to open up about their finances and become vulnerable in a way, say, Dalene, I kind of need help. Help me, please.
Yeah. Yes, very true. This last month I had 5. So I do a free call where we jump on and determine if financial coaching is right for you, right? I had 5 people sign up for a free call. I had 3 no-shows and 2 cancels. And I know why. They got really courageous in that moment to schedule that call. And as the time goes on, they got more fearful, and they're like, I'm going to have to share with her what, and I'm scared to, I'm embarrassed, the shame. And honestly, as a financial coach, I don't feel those emotions for you. Those are your emotions, and yes, you need to honor them. But if you come to me and ask me for help, I do not judge you. I do not say, oh my gosh, I can't believe you got yourself in this situation. I love to help people find a positive route out. And whatever that is, and just like that client I was telling you, he came and we laid out the numbers, and I was like, oh my gosh, how am I going to do this? And I'm like, who else would do this, right? I have to do this. So put my thinking cap on, let it simmer for some few days. And finally, I'm like, okay, this is what we're going to have to do. And it was successful. For 3 months, he maintained. And then the mindset shifts, because that's another thing that has to happen, is getting out of his scarcity mode of, I can't make more money. I don't deserve more money. And I don't, basically, I don't know what I'm doing. And that's a scarcity in itself. And so, yeah, it's just, it is hard to be vulnerable. It is hard to talk about money. And I've been trying to promote, through social media and stuff as well. Like, there are ways to talk about money without you sharing any deets, right? Any of your details. You can just say, hey, how are you handling such and such? To start building that conversation with family, friends, whoever you kind of feel comfortable with, and then it grows from there. You don't have to use all the specifics to say, I am, $100,000 in debt and I don't know how I'm getting out. Just say, hey, how are you handling, a simple thing, and just start, building that relationship and that conversation there. So
Dalene, take us through another important component of money and finances, the budgeting aspect. How are you, what are some of the ways that we can better budget and better manage our finances?
So a lot of people think they can just have that budget in their head, right? So getting it out on paper, and I always like to say it's a plan. When you create a workout, when you create, a schedule for your kids to follow, it's always written down. So number 1, get that budget written down somewhere. And that can be on a spreadsheet, can be on a piece of paper. It doesn't have to be difficult. And then start really deep. Values are so important at this point, right? As you've laid out your plan and you start spending against that, right? You're aware of each line and you're aware of the expenses that are going out. How do they make you feel? Does that bring you value? Is that the direction you want to go? And so I believe if you kind of stay in tune, and a lot of people hate to track because it is a lot of time. So finding the right way, and there are so many different ways to build a tracking system. You can use an app, you can do pen and paper. We used to use check registers back in the day where nothing was digital, right? Nothing was as easy as it is today. But yet I know some of those apps can be so overwhelming for people. So you can just create some bank accounts, and you create them as buckets of money that you have to spend out of them. It's a little bit of keeping that organized in your head. Again, you have to have that written down to know that. And as you start spending and becoming aware of that, with the budgeting, you're going to find more savings. If you need to pay down debt, you're going to find more money to pay down debt. And, you may realize, I had a client, she came to me and she goes, we don't have money at the end of the month. I laid everything out with all of the expenses she said they had. And I said, you have like $800 left at the end of the month. And she goes, there's no way. But she had no money routine, no system. So they were always flopping from one account to another. So it's very important to, number 1, lay out the budget, and then lay out your cash flow system, your plan of how it's going to feed all of the different ways. So
Gone are the days that we used to write down our expenses on stone tablets and a chisel, right?
yes, yes.
We don't do that anymore. The typewriter. Remember the typewriter?
Oh, yes.
But
Love the typewriter.
I love the typewriter. Even though it's not my generation, I had the honor of actually using one. And
Yeah.
because I'm able to type about 60 words a minute, I was pretty
Nice.
good at the typewriter.
Nice. Yes.
But
I
when
was
I
just
made a
this I was just discussing with my husband yesterday because it was on a show, right? About you don't type 120 words a minute, which I used to back in the day. And I said, whenever I have to type something, I think, man, I still got it in me. I don't know how fast I am. So
oh yeah, it's definitely a skill that doesn't leave you because it's just like everything else, right? It's like a muscle. You have to train it and train it. And you just like your finances, you have to train yourself to get into that habit. Because if I came to you and I was like this playboy, free spending, Rolex wearing, jets taking person, and then you're gonna say, you know what, Train? I'm good. We have to cut down your expenses because this is your balance sheet at the end of the day. You're in the negative.
yeah.
I feel great because of the lifestyle that I'm living, right? I'm everywhere. I'm seen. I have all the women, but I'm digging myself deeper, deeper in the hole. When what I think a lot of people don't understand is that that hole eventually catches up with you. You can only live that type of lifestyle for a period of time before the negative consequences of being financially irresponsible catches up with you. And one thing that helped me a lot is, and I'm glad you mentioned it, is the bank account system. I have 3 bank accounts. My pay goes into one. So every time I get paid, my pay goes into the primary account. I take $100, put it into one account, and then I take $150 and put it into another account. And one would be, let's say the second account would be like spending or groceries or food, and the other one would be savings. So out of that savings, I may go into my investments, things of that. And that worked for me because, as you mentioned, at the end of the month, I'm like, oh my God, I have this money? $200, $300, $400? You would be surprised how much money you would have once you start to pay attention. And what are some of the systems that you set up for your clients to say, hey, see, you actually do have money at the end of the month if you started tracking it in the way that I recommend?
Yeah. So, the very first session we do is called a money makeover intensive. And really, we're just looking at all of your expenses. And then I also add in those, I like to call them irregular expenses. You're going to have these expenses. They are not monthly expenses. We get so focused on paycheck or monthly budgeting that we forget about the car registration, the car repairs, the home repairs, all of those things. And yet we should be creating a monthly expense for every one of those. And so adding that in as well and help building that up. And so we delineate all that out. And then I work with them on whatever system they are going to feel comfortable with. I had a lady come to me. She had been married for 40 years. She hadn't managed money since early marriage before their children. And she's like, I just don't know. And she goes, and I am not technically savvy. I says, great, let's do pen and paper. But for her, it wasn't about every little, she's like, I don't want to track everything. And so she had said, I have a bank account. All my bills are auto pay out of there. I said, great, then you don't need to worry about that. Make sure they're paid, but you don't have to track them per se, So then I said, here's your, little sheet, and you can mark these things just in the categories as you're spending them. And we give each category an amount, and she was able to keep track. Well, then after using that, right, and that's the only way you can learn, she's like, it's just too much. It's just too much. And I said, okay. So since she was great with her bank accounts, I added the 3 bank accounts for her. And I said, only watch this number. Make sure you fund it when you get paid. And she was just going to get alimony. I said, and just don't overspend it. And she's like, I can do that. And so finding something simple but effective for the individual or the couple is so very important. It's like what they want to do. I use an app and I love it. And it's every little transaction that comes in there. And I, tell it which line it applies to. But I am a numbers person. That is a natural for me. But those bank accounts, like you said, I think that's very popular. It's a very popular system now. And the client who was very high in debt, he realized as we had worked, he goes, I'm going to add a fourth bank account. That account is going to be for debt payoff. Debt is not a bill, and it shouldn't be in my bills account. It can go away someday. So if I add that other, and so just strategizing for yourself as your mindset changes is so important as well. And so like you were saying your savings, it will feed your investing. It will feed your emergency fund. It will feed, your vacation fund for next year or whatever it is that you've got in there. And that's so, so important.
I guess my question for you is, you're assisting all these clients and your recommendations are so solid and they sound like they come from a place of like experience and passion and definitely knowledge, right?
Mm-hmm.
What got you started in doing all of this and looking to help others manage their debt and their finances?
Well, at about age 35, so both my husband and I were working in government. And at about age 35, my daughter was really little, and I realized, because we have a pension, I could have the option to retire at the age of 48 if I had all my ducks in a row. So I began my journey at that age of 35 and just started making sure that I was really honed in on what we were spending, where it was going, and if it was feeding this future option, because at the day you retire, you take a 40% cut in pay. So you have to be prepared for that, And so I really spent 15 years teaching myself, learning, applying, developing, understanding what was out there. I would go, I would pick a subject and I would just go research it until I was like, okay, this is going to work for me. I'm going to try it and I'll just keep going. And then I move on to another subject as I'm implementing that. So I've done a lot, I've seen a lot, and what some things have worked for other people hasn't worked for me. And that's why I realize, it's really up to you, but you have to learn it. You have to try it, for a certain amount of time and to be able to do that. So a year ago, I retired at the age of 50 and took that immediate 40% cut in pay. My husband had done that 3 years prior. And, he was like, I'm just done there. I'll take my pension, but I'm going to go get another job. And I said, you have to give me 2 months to know that we can live on just your pension. So it's like that, the money that is coming in that we know we will be getting, that's what I want to live on. I don't want to live on anything else we create that will fund other things and create a future. Neither one of us are able to draw on any of our investments, right, for retirement because we're not of age yet. And so how you were saying, make sure you enjoy and make sure you spend, that's been a thought on my mind because he's about 4.5 years away and I'm about 9 years away. What are we going to spend that on? What are we going to do? How are we going to grow it? We have one daughter. And I'm like, I'm sorry, but you're going to have to get this money, And so it's like trying to figure out that next step. But I love numbers. I geek out over numbers. And, but I love to, when I realized my financial freedom dream, I was like, I want to help others have this same feeling. Now, not everybody's dream is to retire early, but they do have a dream. And that could be investing in X number of rentals or whatever it may be. But I want to create that feeling for others and, share my expertise and help you along more quickly than because if I would have had somebody back then, man, I could have done so much more. Yes, I made mistakes. I've learned from them. I've grown. And I just want to share that. So a year ago when I retired, I was like, what am I going to do? I'm 50. I can't sit in my recliner and watch TV all day. I'm still too young. I need to do something. And so that's when I was exploring and it just kind of came about. I found the financial coaching sector and I have a degree in accounting as well as an MBA. So I know that supports it as well. The last 15 years, I helped law enforcement officers learn to budget. And so if I can teach them, I can teach anybody. So
how was that transition for you post retirement because some people, once they retire, they have to find, as you mentioned, a different purpose, or they have to repackage their purpose before they retired, now that they're retired, and what the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years looks like. So how was that transition for you?
Yeah. So, it is, I luckily kind of caught that I have to create something going beyond. My husband had done it. He'd done his own thing. He goes to work for people. He makes the demands of, I'm only working this many hours. I'm working for this pay. So that's kind of the segue he's gone into. I was done. I loved my job. So I didn't leave at a low. I left at a very high, which was one thing I really wanted to do. But I knew that I didn't want to punch a time clock, right? I want to be on my own schedule. I find that's my freedom, my time freedom. And so as I was planning, I was like, okay, first of all, deciding when to retire, that's a whole nother, down to the day. Usually you're like in 10 years and 5 years, but then it gets down to what day are you actually leaving, And so I've learned to, the whole year reflecting back. So it's been just over a year, just over a month, over a year. And reflecting back, I'm like, I have this really, it's a slow pace, but not that I've slowed down. I can linger in the morning. I can take longer. I can make my breakfast at home. I can enjoy it. I'm not eating on the run. I'm not eating at my work desk. And then, I started this business. So I come in here, but I still want to enjoy the freedom of not having to work that 9 to 5. And so transitioning through, number one, that I'm running the dishwasher a whole lot more because I'm eating at home. That's like one of my things, right? And then it's been a whole year, and my fuel expense line, I'm like, now I truly know what that line should be. And it's almost cut in half. So, just recognizing these things, and I'm almost prepping myself for even that next phase. When am I going to be done? Entrepreneur, what is that going to look like? Neither my husband or I are really, we want to travel, but like some people are like, okay, you retire and you go travel all the time. And I think people get hung up in that. That's might be somebody else's dream, but that's not your dream. And so trying to find it, I enjoy being at home. I enjoy being with just my husband. We jet off to go see my daughter once in a while, but really finding that new pace, I think, is what I want to, that, and enjoying longer the things that I missed when I was working, if that makes sense. So
It does. And I'm glad that you mentioned that. And the reason why I asked that question is there's like this stigma when it comes to people who save, that they're not enjoying life. Like they save and they save and they save. And then when they die, they die.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But you answered it so eloquently when you said that I wanted to know what my life afterwards going to look like. What's going to be my pace? And that's important for those who are listening, because you can save, budget, understand, but still enjoy your life.
Yes. Yeah.
Right? Similar to, let's say, for example, someone's looking to lose weight. They're like, Train, I don't want to count my macros. I don't want to pay attention to what I'm eating. Mm-hmm. Similar to bank your finances, right? I don't want to have to count where my money's going. I don't want to have to look at my bank account, because there's like this anxiety. It's overwhelming for a lot of people, right? And they feel that they don't enjoy it. But in both scenarios, you can still enjoy both. You can still have fun and still participate in certain things that you want to participate in, but you can also still be mindful. Do you help people transition to a state where, okay, your finances in order, now let me help you go from your finances being order to the next stage of your life? Do you help with that as well?
Yes, I do. I do a dream session because I know a lot of us, again, it's that paycheck and monthly budgeting. We get so myopic that I think we're afraid to dream. So I love to take my clients through that dreaming session, which means, what are you going to be doing at the age of 80? And it's not just money wise, right? I mean, money controls 95% of our life. So let's just think about your life at 80 years old. What do you want to be doing? And if you think yourself and you're going to be in a care facility, well, how are you going to pay for that? You do need to worry about that today, and it's just thinking about those things, but I'm like, but 80 doesn't mean that you're going to be stuck in a care facility. What if you want to travel still at 80? Or what if you want to live in a different place, or whatever it might be? And I always remind them, remember children, remember little kids. They dream. They have imaginations. They have no boundaries with that imagination. And that's what I think people need to do with their money, in a sense, to get those juices flowing. Otherwise, they're so blindsided on what they can and what they want to do. You know, the kid that comes up to you and is like, I'm going to go play football professionally, or I'm going to be the ice skater or the gymnast, or whatever it is, because they saw that on TV, and we let them believe that, right? So why are we not thinking of that with our money? Why are we not buying that mansion in the hills, or, you know, living by the sea, or whatever it is? And, you know, dream so big that you are constantly, you know, moving that goal and reaching those goals. Now, a dream is different than goals, and targets are different than goals. So you have to have all three working together. And I love to, you know, build that foundation, then show them what dream is, and then explain those next steps within. And obviously we won't complete those together as a coaching a client, but they know what it takes to get there.
For myself, I wanted to retire at the earliest 55. So let's say 20 years from now, right? I'm in my mid 30s. And the job that I work for has a pension that you can contribute to. And then at the end of the year, you retire. And then what I found I was able to participate in a secondary pension. So now I'm saving towards 2. And I think that's really amazing, because I want to be that person that has that freedom where if I want to wake up at 11 a.m., Dalene, I can.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
And I look at some days when I have my vacation and I don't have to wake up at 7 a.m. and I'm like, ah, yes, this is freedom.
Yes, it is. It
right?
is. Yep.
Did you feel that when you decided that I don't want to punch a clock anymore, and that first day after you stopped working, were you like, yes, I've made it, I'm free? How did that feel?
Oh, so the most exciting was I went to bed and I'm like, I don't have to set an alarm. I do not have to set an alarm clock. I can wake up when I want to wake up. Now my body is still on the early mode. I won't tell you what time I wake up, but yet, you know, I can't even remember an event I needed to go to, and I did have to set an alarm because I had to be out of here earlier than I normally am. And that was the weirdest thing. I'm like, I do not want to do this again, you know? So yeah, it just don't have to be to a place on somebody else's, you know, timeline. It's the timeline I choose. I mean, I still make appointments. I still have all of that, but I have full control over that, you know? And so, yeah, no alarm. It's very freeing. It starts your day. And, you know, like I said, then I go with that pace. I get up, have my coffee, I read my book, and then I'm like, okay, I'm ready to start my day. You know, and that might take an hour and a half, or it might take 2.5 hours, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. And I love that. I love that.
So as we close today, what's one thing that you would love to change in the world today?
I would love to change that people would talk about money more. And they can start in their own home with their spouse, partner, children, or with their friends. Just start having more conversations about money. And like I said earlier, it doesn't have to be, oh, hey, how much do you make? You know, it can be something as, I did this fun thing with my money the other day, or I was able to save $50 on this purchase. Just keep it simple and just start talking about money more.